This spring, I started off with cleaning up my backyard. I built a vegetable garden that's looking fantastic. I gave a garden tour of my front yard. I trimmed my fuchsia back. I dug up my dahlia bulbs and replanted them. Those are looking fantastic. And now it is time to give you a backyard garden tour. And today I will show you not only my backyard of what's growing back here, but what is also growing up on top of my chicken coop, because something is growing up there that I really never thought would come back this year. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Juanita and welcome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification button. And if you want to see more of this, you guys, give me a big thumbs up because that really helps me along with my channel. So with that, let's get started. So I'll start off with my rock rose here. This is a chrysanthemum rock rose, and that is a medicinal plant, but I won't go into that right now. I just kind of wanted to show you this plant because it is an evergreen and it is beautiful. In the summer, it blooms profusely. However, the blooms on them are probably about a 4-petal flower, and they're very delicate. Any slight wind will blow those petals out, but it's still gorgeous. It still blooms beautifully, and because it's an evergreen, it just looks really beautiful in the yard all year round. The foliage on it really reminds me of like oregano or a mint, and I am getting a lot of flowers, as you can see. I trimmed this in early spring, and so it's being a little bit more compact. But do you see all these little blooms that are coming, or buds that are coming up? Now this one won't get too much wider than this, and it's only supposed to get about 3 feet to 3 feet tall and wide. Over here I have, it looks like my stakes are coming up. Put that back down. This right here is a hop-like oregano, and I just absolutely love this plant. This one is the same one that I have in the porch side garden, and I may pull this out and put a lavender here, because I did have a lavender here before, and I just really liked the way the lavender looked in this corner. But this particular oregano hop-like, they really like bright light, but they don't want necessarily hot sun on them. There's a little bit of a myth that they take full sun, but full sun doesn't necessarily mean, you know, beating hot sun. It just means like what you're getting here, where it's very bright and just getting a lot of that filtered light. And the more it gets, the bigger the petals will get. They'll get about that round. I don't know how well you can see that. And these make a great plant for containers as well, so keep that in mind. Over here I have, and I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but I think they're crocosimas. These are all the ones that I planted in the springtime. Not all of them came up. I'm pretty sure that the chickens dug a lot of them out, because I had quite a few out extended over to this side where you see that little divot. Yeah, and as you can see, that one over there is kind of struggling. So no doubt the chickens kind of dug them up, and that's why I have them caged up, because when my plants are coming up in the springtime, I like to protect them a little bit. Then once they're up like this, the chickens don't bother them, and I've noticed that my little dog doesn't really bother them as much either. So that's great news for me. But yeah, so I'm excited to see this, because these ones will bloom these this beautiful deep orange to red with a little bit of yellow. I blended a couple different colors, and they'll bloom more towards the later on in the season, like more in the summer. So I can't wait to see that happening. Over here I have a couple of Russian sage, and I'm not 100% sure of the type of sage, but I believe they're the dwarf one. But I have one here and then one here. And again, I have them caged up, but eventually I will remove those. And then back here, I have a blue tussle, and that's going to be gorgeous. And it may just be the same height all the way around, but it's just going to be really beautiful with that deep bluish gray, the Russian sage, which is more of a purplish color. I think it's going to look really nice. These are also new. These are something that I planted last spring when I did my crocosimas over here. This here, this is an interesting story. This is a blue shrimp. This will get about 12 to 18 inches tall, and it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. I don't know if you're familiar with the shrimp plants, but as you can see, it's getting its flowers. Now this petals will look like a shrimp looking type petal, and they'll get about that long. And it just is a beautiful plant. I saw it at the Portland nursery one year, and I just loved it. And they said it was an annual, but these are actually zoned from 5 to 9. So they're really kind of considered as a perennial here. But last year, I purchased some, and I totally spaced out, left them in my pergola, and before I knew it, they were practically dead, and when I planted them, they never made it. So this year, I went and bought some because they only have a short window of when they have them, and that's in the springtime. And I bought them, I bought 3 of them, and immediately planted them, and they are doing fantastic. And they're loving right this little spot. Now these will seed out, so hopefully I can get a little bit more, because I just thought this was a stunning plant when I saw it in their patches of gardens, and I just fell in love with it. Now they do have different colors, and the petals, I mean, the petals are really pretty interesting, and they almost feel scaly right here where it's white. Yeah, it's very interesting how they feel. And then the outer part, so maybe that's kind of like that shrimp shell and stuff, but it's getting a lot of blooms, and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, and then right above it, I have one of my most beautiful plants here, and this is a black lace elderberry. I love this one, and I'm telling you, I don't follow a lot of the rules of gardening. I actually just do my own thing, and things just always work out for me. Now, I don't know the specifics about how you're supposed to trim this particular one, other than you should trim them in springtime. However, I trim this several times a year, because if I don't, it'll get really, really tall, and it will also get limbs that cascade over, and then it puts a lot of shade into these plants. And so I've been trying to keep it in this shape as much as possible and keep it below the fence there. And look at this, it's got a ton of blooms coming up. Now the blooms are these beautiful pink blooms, and they're about like almost like a dinner size plate, maybe even a salad plate size, but they are just gorgeous. 2 years ago, it got like 90 to 100 degrees, and it actually fried the limbs, and so it didn't bloom as profusely. But this year, it's just, I'm looking at this plant, and it's just filled with blooms this year. And I trimmed it last fall, which they say don't do that. So if I said that earlier, I meant you're supposed to trim it in the springtime. And then I again trimmed it after cleaning up my garden early in springtime. I went and trimmed it and cut it way, way down. So I don't think I cut any of the blooms off, because it's definitely blooming beautifully. Can't wait to show you that. Anyway, moving on from that, this one here is Coreospis. It's called a pot of gold, And this one here, I kind of protected it because last year the chickens really kind of scraped around it and reduced the size. Now this one is non-invasive. However, it's like my fuchsia that I pointed out on my previous video, where it grows from the ground up, but it'll grow as a clump. So it's just gorgeous, and it'll be filled with little yellow flowers, and it's gorgeous. And it does look like maybe, it almost reminds me a lot of dill. And it doesn't look like it's getting its flowers yet. But again, it's not invasive. Even though it grows from the ground up, it pretty much stays in a clump. Then over here I have black-eyed Susan, and then I have coneflowers, echinacea, more black-eyed Susan right here, and then more echinacea over here. And then right here is a yarrow. This one's a yellow yarrow. And it's got tons of blooms coming up. I love yarrow. I just think they are the most gorgeous plant. Now, all I did with this one was cut the dead foliage from last year. That's it. I didn't really cut it down or anything like that. And I just absolutely love yarrow. It does fantastic in this area. I had it in my porch garden before, and it kind of struggled because it didn't get quite as much sun as this gets. So this is a full sun yarrow. Gorgeous. And then this is, I believe, a spider lily. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous lily. And every year it looks like it's not gonna make it. It looks weathered. In fact, you can see I've got to add a lot of the bulbs kind of rotted off. And I never really dig around it or dig these up. I probably should have divided them, but they do fantastic regardless of not doing anything to them. I do need to add more soil here, but outside of that, they do beautiful. And this will fill out this whole entire area. It's pretty hardy in my book. Very little cleanup, but yeah, this does amazing. It does get crowded out a little bit from my hot lip salvia here. And this one was another one that I trimmed early springtime. And we got another hit of cold frost, and as you can see, there's a lot of dead limbs. So I gotta come here and cut this. But this is generally a very tough plant. This probably gets about 4 feet tall. Over here I have a Chihuly rose bush. I only have climbing rose bushes, and then I have this Chihuly rose tree, and I just absolutely love this. This is so gorgeous. Every flower on here is of a different color, and it is very fragrant, and it is so beautiful, and it's doing pretty good right now. I take out any of the dead branches. It looks like I missed one right here, but I do take off any dead limbs, and then I do try to give some air flow, because if you don't give airflow on roses, they do tend to be more susceptible for diseases and mold and stuff like that. So if you're not familiar with roses, that's something to keep in mind. But this one is stunning. Over here I have a trumpet. It's an orange trumpet. You can probably barely see all the limbs coming out. And this here, I do see that I'm getting some growth. I'm gonna go through my trellis here. But do you see some growth here? And I've been wanting it to get some growth down further down below, and it hasn't really done it. But this here looks like it's doing it. And I love this trumpet. Now, a lot of people claim that trumpet plants are invasive. I've never had this be invasive. They say that a lot about wisteria too, but maybe I just got lucky and just got stuff that wasn't invasive. And it doesn't get like tremendously large, but it's still beautiful and the neighbors benefit more from the flowers than I do because for some reason this part gets shaded. But yeah, love that plant. And then over here I have a lot of hostas. I just love my hostas. And this is going to look gorgeous. This is about, I think, a year old, this whole area, outside of my broomstick hydrangea. Everything else pretty much is within a year old. And a lot of these hostas are going to be giant hostas, so they are going to overlap each other if I don't move one or two out of the way. But I have this one here, which is a giant hosta that's just doing fantastic. And then I have this one right there. These two I bought as a bundle, and I can't remember what company I got them from, and they came without a name. And I was kind of disappointed about that because I was really hoping to have names on them. So other than knowing that they're giant hostas, I really don't know the variety of them, but that's going to look gorgeous when it's all filled out. Then, of course, my broomstick. It's also known, actually, kind of like an endless summer, but the true name of it is a broomstick. I guess broomstick, endless summer, whatever you want to call it. But this one's doing gorgeous. This one, I kind of treated it this year the same way as I did my oak leaf hydrangeas, where I just basically deadheaded all the dead foliage or flowers from last year and any dead limbs. Outside of that, I didn't even touch it because broomsticks, in reality, if you're not familiar with hydrangeas, at least for endless summer and broomsticks, these have a high tendency to have diseases or have corrosives really, really bad. So I struggle once in a while with this one, but I've had it in this yard for a long time, and it blooms beautiful blooms that are an array of color, and I just absolutely love it for that reason. The stems on them, on this one here, because it's a broomstick, is kind of in the reddish color. I don't know how well you can see that, but they're kind of reddish, and that's what makes this kind of stand out from other ones. And typically these hydrangeas, you don't really need to trim them at all. I trim mine, and like I said, this year all I did was deadhead the flowers. I did give it a little bit of airflow because, like roses, this will also be prone to diseases if you don't give it airflow. But this one blooms from old wood as well as new wood. So that's one thing that's beautiful about this plant. And again, it's my understanding that broomsticks, you don't necessarily need to prune them back. So there you go. Over here I have a June hosta. Isn't that gorgeous, you guys? This is so beautiful. I love hostas that have this beautiful blue trims to them, and June hostas are gorgeous for that, as well as the blue ivory here. These ones are just going to be gorgeous as they get older and start multiplying and getting much larger. But both of these are blue attached to the name, as well as my blue angel over here. I don't know how well you can see how it has a little bit of a iridescence of blue. Now the thing with that, if you put hostas that have that blue hue to them, and you put them where they get a lot of sun, that blue will fade and it will not come back the rest of the season. Now they may get it back the following year, but that blue is part of their gene, their makeup, and so if bleach it out from the sun, from having it into direct sun, that just won't look the same. And then, you just have a plain old hosta. And I just love the colors, because if you look standing out. Look at how beautiful this makes it, so colorful, with having all this different patterns and varieties, and just the foliage is different in each individual one. And that's the beauty about hostas, is that you don't necessarily need to have blooms on them for them to look beautiful in the yard. You can plant them in a raised garden. You can put them in containers around with other flowers, and they'll do beautiful. This one here is called a blue angel, and that's going to get really, really large. It's going to fill in this whole area. So I may have to move that forward once these two get really big, because this is a Komodo dragon. This one's supposed to have eventually kind of like a purplish pink foliage, but we'll see. But this one is going to be huge, these two. So I may have to rethink this whole hosta area down the road. But for now, hostas, they take time to get that big. So for now, I'm gonna let it be. This one here is a island breeze, and this one's, I mean, it just looks breezy, right? With the color, that really chartreuse, kind of yellowish green, and it's just gorgeous. And I just absolutely, how stunning that just kind of makes this whole little area a little brighter, and I love that. And this will get about 36 inches in diameter. This one's supposed to get about 24 inches to about 24 inches in diameter. And then I have a pirate hosta here, and it really struggled because the chickens dug around here. So it looks like, oh yeah, there's another one. So it is coming up. It's just delayed a little bit. I think a lot of it has to do with the chickens digging into it, because either that or it's just a later bloomer, you know, where it emerges a lot later than any of the other ones. But that one's coming up. Happy to see that. That one has some white in it. Beautiful. And then last, I have a Marivarigata. And look at the foliage on this. I love the way it curls. And this is the beauty about hostas, is that they're all so different. And look at the foliage on that. Isn't that gorgeous with that, just that stripe? Yeah, I love this. I love hostas. They're easy care. They're a no fuss plant. You know, they don't really even like to be fertilized. I never fertilize mine. Outside of the fact that I gave it a little bit of fish fertilizer when I first planted them, I really haven't added a lot of amendments to it. Of course, the soil that I usually use Kellogg raised garden bed soil. And so that already has some amendments in it anyway, because it's made for vegetables as well as for flowers. So that has a lot to do with it. Now, all of these flower with different colors, but the flowers are kind of insignificant in comparison to the foliage. So when you buy hostas, you know, some people like the flowers. Personally, I'm not so sure that they're all that stunning. And it takes a lot of energy from the hosta too. But I love that. And then I have my coral bells here, and they're just coming out of from being beat up from the winter months, because coral bells can be a evergreen. They're pretty much considered, in my book, they're considered an evergreen because they don't die down. They may slow down and kind of go dormant a little bit, but the foliage still stays out. They just get beat up like this, and I usually don't cut them back at all. I may add more soil and give it a little bit of amendments, but outside of that, I don't do anything. And eventually these are going to all be so big that it's going to combine together, and that's going to be beautiful. Then right here I have what they call a Japanese painted fern. Isn't this just gorgeous? I mean, it just looks beautiful. I love that red and that silvery color. Now this fern here will die down completely down. You won't even see it. So if you don't mark that they're there, you may end up digging them up because they are very slow to come out in the spring, but when they do, they look gorgeous. And look at how well it looks with the heucheras here, or coral bells. Doesn't that look gorgeous together? And then last, I do have a Nellie Moser here and an Alessa Sploth. And I'm not sure if I'm saying the name on this one correctly, but these are starting to get their blooms. Look at that. And every year, after the first year that you plant them, the blooms will be very, very small. But these typically, both will get about an expansion of 4 to 6 inches in diameter. And this one is kind of like I want to say kind of like a purplish blue. But I'll show it to you once it becomes in bloom. But this one, look at how large that. But I've got, and I don't know how well you can see that, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blooms on this. Now, these are also in a group 2 clematis, so I should have trimmed it this fall, at least up to here, because that would have forced a lot more of the growth down here. But as you can see, it's pretty baresome when you go up this stem. You can hardly even see the stem. But as time goes on, it'll get thicker down below. As you can see right here, this one's starting to get a little thicker. This one's starting to get a little thicker. And when you trim them down about 1/3 of their full growth, then that will just get fuller. So keep that in mind. I didn't do it. It doesn't hurt to not do it. You're still going to get blooms, but it'll just look more sparse. The other thing to mention about clematis is that once they've done blooming and the blooms have fallen off, you can then once again trim this. So you can trim it in the spring, you can trim it in the fall. At least I did with my President clematis, and it's looking beautiful. And you can trim it right after its first blooms, and then it'll get a second bloom. So keep that in mind. And I'm just going to point this out because this actually comes from the neighbor's side, and I thought it was going to be beautiful as a ground cover here, but it's really invasive. And I don't like invasive plants. As you can see, I've been trying to cut it back, but it's been invading my hostas, and it looks like I got a good portion out of the way. But see how I got all these suckers? If I dig down, all this is going to be new plants. And it's gorgeous as this is some kind of a weed wart type of plant, and it has beautiful, I think, whitish flowers on it, but those will probably seed out. And so what would you guys do? Would you get rid of it? I mean, I thought it would really look pretty in this garden, but when it starts trying to choke out my hostas or my hydrangea here, I'm going like, no, you gotta go. Okay, let's see. Right over here, I have some Kona grass. I love Kona grass. I think that is one of my favorite things in a yard. It looks beautiful around boulder rocks. It looks great in containers, and it just looks beautiful cascading over even stones like this. Want to plant more of that. Over here, I'm not sure what this plant is. If you guys can help me out and know what this is, let me know. This one was in another part of the yard many years ago, and I moved it here to kind of help shade the runner, and it's doing a great job of that. And this year it's growing really nice. But the funny thing about this is that it's supposed to be variegated just like you see right here, and it's beautiful. But the overall plant now is turning just green. Now that could be due to lack of sunlight, because this does get morning sun, afternoon shade, so that may have a lot to do with it. But if you know the reasons for that, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your opinions are on it, or if you even know what the name of it is. Then down here I have a Miss Piggy that I planted last year. Hasn't bloomed, probably gets too much shade. And then right here is another one of those group hostas that I forgot about that I planted over here. And it probably is going to be a giant too. It almost looks like the Komodo dragon, the way the markings are. But I didn't know what to do with it, so I put it over here. I'll probably move it down the road. But it looks like the snails are getting to it, so I do need to put some moisture shells around it. Over here I have another medicinal plant. This is a St. John's wort plant, and this will take full sun to part sun. I moved it here many years ago to help also shade the chicken runner, and it does really good. This will get morning sun. It will get some afternoon sun, but for the most part it gets shaded because of my lilac tree. Isn't that just a gorgeous, gorgeous tree? Love it. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then it gets some shade because of the star jasmine over here, and then this gorgeous Japanese lace leaf maple. Isn't that just gorgeous? But because of all that, this St. John's wort gets a little bit more shaded, but it still blooms profusely. And supposedly this is listed as an invasive plant, but let me tell you, I have never ever had this be invasive. Supposedly the seedlings can blow by air or water or whatever, and that the seeds will stay dormant for a long time until you disturb that piece of land. But I have grass here, as you can see. I've got tons of areas where this could seed out to, and I have never ever had this seed out. So I'll leave that up to you whether you like it or don't like it in your yard, but personally for me, I absolutely love this plant. Now, I am not a doctor, so I'm going to put that disclaimer out there because it is a medicinal plant. So you can make teas out of both the flowers as well as the root and maybe even the leaves. But the one thing is that if you are under any kind of depression or anxiety medication, this is not something you take lightly and do not mess with. As far as making teas, I would not even touch it as far as a medicinal plant. However, the flowers are beautiful, and you can always enjoy the plant as a garden plant. So that's just something I want to put out there. And then, of course, here I have my lilac tree. Isn't this stunning? Now, it flowers first, and then it'll get all of this foliage if you're not familiar with lilac trees. Now, a neighbor of mine gave me this, and so I planted it in a container because I had heard that this was an invasive species. I don't think that's necessarily true because the one she has in her yard is not invasive. But she gave me just a limb of it that she had started, and she gave it to me. So this has been in that same pot probably, I'd say a good 7 years, if not more. I think the roots have already gone through that pot, and that pot is just surrounding the trunk of it and being a decorative piece now because I can't budge that. But it's okay. It's not growing, as you can see, it's not rooting and shooting up new plants, so I'm going to consider that as non-invasive. So anyway, that is just one of my pride and joys. I absolutely love it. And it did take probably 3 years before it actually really started flowering for me. But once it starts flowering, every year after that, it just gets more and more blooms, and it just looks stunning like it is. And I do trim it down. I trim this several times during the year because it can bush out. So I will trim some limbs back to kind of keep it a little bit more tapered in. And just so that it doesn't get too tall, I will just basically top it right here, right across. So yeah, love this plant. Now let me take you up on top of my chicken coop, because I have something growing that is a shocker to me. Was not expecting this. But do you see this? Do you see all that? Do you recognize what that is? Do you recognize all this? All this right here is romaine lettuce. I planted, I don't know, 4 plants of romaine lettuce. I did red romaine, and then I did this green romaine. And I planted 2 of them over in this direction. One of them got really tall and it seeded out. Never thought much of it. And here I have a whole garden spot filled with romaine lettuce that just looks delicious. And I can't wait to start doing some Caesar salads this year. I will also show you the top of my roof now that I'm up here. So for those of you that have been following my channel for some time, know that I replanted this. I took everything out from the top of it because it was way overgrown. It looked awful and it was just really bad. So I replanted the whole thing. Some of the plants that I had up here, I replanted them in here, but for the most part, everything here was new. And some things did not make it, like some of my hens and chickens that were more tender didn't quite make it, but everything else really has grown and is just beautiful. And everything here will bloom. I have some rock rose. Let me take you up there. I can't even remember all the names of the sedums, but all of them do bloom in one way or another. I'm gonna try not to fall here. This is called, I believe it's like a watch sedum, and it's just gorgeous. And then I do have some, this creeping thyme. I did plant quite a bit of it going across, and it looks like only 2 made it here, but it's okay because that'll spread, and that's just gonna look gorgeous. And it's got like little pink flowers that bloom. And then I've got a lot of this other sedum. This rooftop is not very big, but you can see everything that I'm growing here. This is a rose bush. This is another Japanese rose bush that I have. It's a climbing rose bush, and it's got tons of buds on it. Tons of buds that are gonna come up, and this is just looking gorgeous. I went to the neighbor's yard last year and really gave it a good trimming, and it is just doing fantastic. I do have one cactus here. This is, I think it's called a PERGOLA. I'll put the name down, but this is blooms beautifully as well. And then of course, as you can see, some of the sedum hens and chickens didn't quite make it that were beautiful up here, but these will spread what I do have, so I'm okay with what I've got. And it's really having succulents up on a rooftop like this. It's more about having insulation for your chickens and having a rooftop that also blooms as well, and low maintenance. Now you can see all of my romaine lettuce, and I have a strawberry that was from last year, and it has a lot of blooms and strawberries coming up too. But these ones I'm gonna have to pull out, and I'm not sure, maybe you guys can let me know, can I pull those up and replant them? Because I really need to add dirt here to plant other things. So I'm not sure what I need to do for this year. I think maybe just add some more lettuce here and let it be for this year, because I really would hate to disturb all this. This is amazing. Are you guys familiar with romaine lettuce seeding out and recreating itself like this? I didn't know that it did, and I actually asked a gal at the Portland nursery if that is something that happens, and she was not familiar with that happening. So it's very, very interesting and a nice surprise. Let me tell you, I've got some good Caesar salads coming up this year. And now you can see my yard from on top of my chicken coop. This is gorgeous. I love looking down. I'm gonna get down from here. I'll see you down at the bottom. Okay, you guys, that's gonna do it for me. I really hope that you enjoyed this garden tour. I can't wait to show you when things are actually in bloom, but at least you got to see the progression of what it's like right now. And yeah, I love it. I can't wait till all this is filled out, and it's just gonna look even more beautiful as the season goes. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for watching. And again, if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button and that notification button. And most importantly, you guys, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. That really helps my channel out. Okay, you guys, I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to get up, get out, and get active, and just walk your garden or go for a walk, whatever the case may be. Just get out there. Okay, I'll see you guys next time.